Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, and I wanted to have a little Bible story and give you a challenge for the rest of the week. Um, I want to thank the people who answered the last challenge because there are some people that are going to have porch drop offs of candy. So, congratulations to you guys who answered my questions last week. But this week, we're going to talk about Daniel, and we're going to kind of tie in last week's with this week, but Daniel 6. So if you have a Bible at home, go ahead and open that up and read that with your parents and read the story of Daniel. It's a real good story. A lot of you already know the story, but I wanted to go over it again with you anyways. So basically, King Darius was a king over a large kingdom. Okay, he was over a big, large kingdom. And his kingdom was broken up into small, what they call providences, but for the sake of this, we'll talk about them as cities. So how we have cities like Detroit and Dearborn, Westland, Dearborn Heights, his kingdom was broken up into smaller groups like that. And he appointed people to be over those specific providences. So it would be like a mayor of Dearborn, a mayor of Detroit, the mayor of Westland. They are in charge of that city and making sure that the rules are followed within that city. So King Darius appointed these people over the providences. Then he had 3 officials, and David was one of them, who were put in charge of overseeing those other leaders to make sure that the laws that were put into place were actually carried out. So what happens in the story is Daniel did so well at his job, and he was so honest and faithful that King Darius thought to himself, you know what, I think I'm going to make Daniel ruler over everything. I want him to be the ruler over everything that's going on here. So he would be the top person to make sure my whole kingdom was running right. Well, the other couple of leaders got very jealous about that because, of course, they did not want Daniel to be their boss. They wanted to be the boss themselves, or they just didn't want him in there at all. And so they started trying to find things that maybe Daniel did wrong. And they watched him, and they couldn't find him do anything wrong. He always was doing the right thing. He was always being honoring and respectful to the leader, to King Darius. And so they couldn't find any fault in him. So then they sat and thought to themselves, you know how we could mess with Daniel is we could bring his religion and his beliefs into this. Because what Daniel believed, if you remember back further in the story, Daniel and the other young men were captured out of their city and brought into this city and taught the customs and the ways of this new land and these new people. So he wasn't from there. He was a Hebrew and he believed in God, and so he wasn't from there. So they thought, you know what, we can get him by doing this to him. And so what they did is they went to King Darius and they started just, praising him and getting him all puffed up and proud. And, oh, King Darius, you're the best king ever, and you rule so fair, and I think we should worship you and we should honor you in everything that we do. And they got King Darius all caught up in this thing. And they said, you know what, we think we should make this rule that everybody needs to worship you. And if anybody worships any other god or person instead of you, that they should be thrown into the lion's den. And so King Darius, all caught up in all this praise and all this admiration for him, said, oh my gosh, that sounds like a great idea. Let's go ahead and do it. And so he signed the papers. So as soon as he signed the papers, it became law. And so these men went back and showed it to Daniel and said, look at the new law that King Darius just signed. Well, Daniel was very upset. And so, of course, his first thing to do was he went home and he prayed. And he did his usual prayer 3 times a day, sitting by his window. And so he was praying, and they caught him praying. And so they ran back to King Darius really fast. Said, King Darius, guess what? Guess what? Daniel is praying to another god. And just like your law says, just like your rules say, he must be thrown into the lion's den. Well, King Darius was so upset because he really loved Daniel. And so he was like, is there a way out of this? And he tried to figure out a way to get out of it and a way not to have to carry through with the law. But these men reminded him, you know what? When you sign a law, it has to be done no matter what. And he agreed. He said, you're right. You are absolutely right. So he had Daniel arrested and thrown into the lion's den. And he was put in the lion's den, and they rolled a big stone over the front of the lion's den, over the mouth, so nothing could come in and nothing could come out. No person could go in and help him, and he wouldn't be able to escape. And so he was stuck all night in the lion's den. And the king was so upset. He was so upset. And first thing in the morning, as soon as it was morning, he ran to the mouth of the lion's den and yelled, Daniel, Daniel, are you there? Are you there? And Daniel called out, yes, I am here. My God protected me. My God kept me safe because I have not been found guilty in his sight. I have been true to you. I have been a good servant, and I am faithful to God. And because of that, God protected me and shut the mouths of the lions so I would not be harmed. So they rolled the stone away, and King Darius was so excited that Daniel had been saved and spared during the night. And he was so angry that he grabbed those men that accused Daniel before and their wives and children and threw them into the lion's den for the lions to eat. And from then on, King Darius told all of the people in his kingdom, you should fear Daniel's God and worship him. And so Daniel was spared by God. And I thought this story was really important because I think right now, while we're kind of stuck in our houses and we can't do the things we used to do, and you can't go play on playground equipment, and you're not allowed to go to your friends' houses or a birthday party or school, as far as that goes. You can't go to any of those things. That sometimes we might feel a little bit like Daniel, that we are trapped in a cave and somebody's rolled a stone in front of it and we can't get out. And we're not sure what's going to happen. And it's a little unsettling and it's a little scary sometimes. But you know what? Daniel knew that God would protect him. Daniel knew that God is going to take care of him. Daniel understood who God was. And he was able to rely on that and trust in that. And he was saved and protected by God because of that. So your challenge right now, we're continuing the who is God to me. Who was God to Daniel? I want to hear your answers on that. Who do you think God was to Daniel in this story? You can pick any point of the story that you think God is, something in particular, whatever happened to touch your heart. But who was God to Daniel when he was serving the king? Who was God to Daniel when he found out that this law had been put into place and he knew he had to break the law? Who is God to Daniel when he was thrown into the lion's den to be eaten? Who was God to Daniel when he wasn't touched and he didn't even have a scratch on his body? So if you can answer any of those, send me a text, put it on Facebook and answer the video, whatever you can do. I want you to answer that and tell me, because again, it earns you points for candy and it earns you points to be able to get prizes. So I would love to hear your answers. Who was God to Daniel? Because you know what? When you learn who God was to Daniel, God can become that for you. I love you guys. I miss you guys so much. And I pray for you every day. I pray for your safety. I pray that we'll be able to be together again and I'll be able to see everyone again. And just stay focused on God. I really challenge you to read Daniel 6 because Daniel went through a very difficult time for his faith, but he was strong. He knew who God was to him, and he was able to ride through that storm, ride through that situation without having any problems. And so that's what I pray for you, that as we sit in our homes and we ride out this little issue in our lives, that in the big picture it's very small. And in the big picture, it's something that we can rise above. Who is God to Daniel is the question. But who is God to you is the real question. So I love you guys. I'll see you soon. Be blessed and just know you're being prayed for and that we love you. I'll talk to you later.